Dawn singing. We're going to make up for that right now with one of the Dawns with us or Vigils.
Today we're going to sing One Heart, One Love. Let's go through.
One heart, one club. Let's get together, do good, have fun. Church and the spirit run. Let's get together, do good, have fun. Rotary gives thanks and then the work is done. Let's get together, do good, have fun. One heart, one club. Let's get together, do good, have fun. Peace to service, a new day is come. Let's get together, do good, have fun. The daughter of the sun. Let's get together, do good, have fun. One heart, one love. Let's get together, do good, have fun. One heart, one love. Let's get together, do good, have fun.
Yay! Now Mr. Jim Fulseth is going to come up here and inspire us all.
This guy's amazingly organized. You know? He hands out the sheets to everybody along with the timelines. I guess it ensures that, you know, we keep our time within the limits. So I want to focus on my inspirational talk today. Civility and respect. So civility is treating others with politeness and courtesy. And treating others with politeness and courtesy is the essence of civilization. You can't have civilization without civility. We now live in a society that I suspect has lost a bit of civility. In fact, we're in the middle of our first pandemic. It's my first pandemic. And we can't even agree upon whether we've got a pandemic, much less about how to deal with it. And sometimes we have difficulty talking to each other about those issues. And I often find inspiration in members of this club for various things. And Bob Athenauer, a longtime member of this club, was always an inspiration to me in terms of how he dealt with people. It was just natural for him. He related to people. He was always polite, very civil, always very respectful of whomever he was talking to. And that was an inspiration to me then, and it's an inspiration to me now. So whenever I'm having a difficult time dealing with some obstinate, bullheaded attorney trying to negotiate something, I take a deep breath and stop and think, well, how would Bob handle this? And it's very simple. He would just be very polite and civil and respectful, and not get too upset and wound up by any of it, and just go on and get it done. So I think we lost a little civility in our society, and we're divided in so many ways today. And often we can't even talk to one another about it. There are a lot of people out there that don't agree with us. I mean, there are a lot of bullheaded, stupid people out there who don't agree with everything we believe in. Bob's no longer with us, but civility and respect are the essence of the Rotary four-way test as well. I mean, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? So part of the answer is Let's all be more like Bob.
Thank you, Jim, very much. Now, I would like to introduce visiting Rotarians. I know we have at least one in the room. Mr. Tucknap, would you like to introduce a visiting Rotarian across from you? Not to put you on the spot, Bob. I don't mind doing that.
Well, we have a great group today, having a fellow Rotarian from the third Rotary organization in the world, we'll put them to three, we don't like to forget that. We have our district attorney, and she's also going to be our speaker today, so you guys are making her work for her lunch. So anyway, Nancy O'Malley, let's give her a nice one.
And the man that just spoke, I will introduce him. In the category of electrical contractor from the Rotary Club of Dublin. Little help from the crowd? Are there any other visiting Rotarians in the room? A guest of Rotarians? Okay. Deanna, you want to introduce him?
In the process of joining the Rotary Club, very excited to be, I guess, I don't want to say, traversing the plains of Pleasanton, learning how to get in touch with my community a little bit better. Thank you.
Any other guests here in the room? Okay. Now we have our Rotary International video. Can you run that, please? When I found that video and watched it, it really touched me because I thought about the people in this club and how busy of lives that they have and how many different hats they have to wear, but yet all of you find time to go out there and serve others to improve other people's lives. And that makes me really proud to be a Rotarian and really proud to be president of this club, and that you're here serving side by side with me. So thank you for your service. I have a couple of brief announcements from Pete and Gary. But first, I'm going to spend about 20 seconds. Tom Fox showed me this when he walked in the door today. Tom is working on this golf cause that it's a charity event that's going to raise money for hospice care in the Tri-Valley. And if you want to know more about it, brochures on the front table, or you can grab Tom after the meeting and talk to him about that. So now Pete McDonald is going to talk about Spirit Run.
Okay, thank you, President Bell, and hello, fellow Rotarians. You heard about, thank you for giving back to the community. I'm going to give you an opportunity to give more to the community. I'm here, I'm the publicity chair for Rotary Halloween Spirit Run this year. I want to point out a couple of things about it. Some of us weren't aware. It's going to start and finish at the fairground, basically.
I said woohoo.
I
said woohoo.
Oh, I'm getting cheers already. Yeah. So it's going to happen right near where the Stable Cafe is off of Gate 12. We're getting all of the literature built around that, but we're still going to have people downtown to refer the people who come from the wrong direction. This is an all hands on deck, meaning all Rotarians that need to participate to make this work. We already have a group of committee chairs that's been working for a long time. Larry Hannes is the chair of the whole event, and he's drafting the whip. I'm the publicity chair. Brad Hurst and Gino Ashley are in charge of sponsorship. That is the critical path item that's happening right now. I think most of you got a letter from Larry saying, hey, if you know somebody, here's a letter you can use, here's an approach you can use to ask them if they would be interested in sponsorship. Right now is the time to really go back, see that letter from Larry, and if you can think of somebody who might be a good sponsor, kind of tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, we'd like this help. There's a great list that they have showing all of the things that Rotary has done in Spirit Run, and it adds up to a ton. I think about $1 million of scholarship just rounded off, and I forget the exact number on wheelchairs, but just an amazing number. And then also, if you have any questions about the Spirit Run, how it's going to happen, or what, any issues or things like that, please bring them up right now. We've got various committee chairs here that can answer the questions. We just want to make sure everybody's kind of attuned. Halloween Spirit Run. It's Halloween Day. It's at the fairgrounds. Everybody who runs is going to get free admission to the fair, free parking for the fair. So it's a true bargain compared to prior years with that extra added. Any questions about the Spirit Run? Let us know. Otherwise, thank you.
The Spirit Run is our largest fundraiser of the year, and we need the entire club to be engaged. So please be grateful that you have this super good leadership team working on this, but be prepared to serve. Gary Harrington is going to give us an update about WASH.
Ricky's going to put on the slides. I appreciate it. Thank you, President Bill. Today, I'm going to talk to you about WASH and why WASH, and then show pictures of our project. We're at the very end, they're in the last stage. But the reason why WASH is so important is 748 million people do not have clean drinking water. What's even worse is 2.5 billion people lack the access of improved sanitation. And to give you a small example of why this is so important. 1,400 children per day die from diseases caused by lack of sanitation and unsafe water. So our project takes place in Nigeria, and I want to give you a quote from the lead club of District 9960, which I think explains a lot of things. Nigeria is an interesting and challenging country. They now have a population of 191 million people. This is where our project is right now, and the largest economy in Africa. At the same time, Nigeria has the second highest rate of open defecation in the world. That is a lot of poop. In the quote. Okay, now next slide shows you where Nigeria is in Africa on the left. In the middle is Abia, the state of Abia, bottom half of Nigeria. And on the right shows the Abia state, and Omisma is the community where our project takes place. Next slide. Okay, in the upper left-hand corner is the bathroom facility that they have now. For one person can be in it. There are approximately 550 students at the school and 17 staff. Okay, the new proposed one doesn't look like this one's finished, but I mean, it's supposed to be like that. In the center is the groundbreaking and then setting up the ground. Next slide. Okay, this is the continuing building. This is phase 2 of it. And you can see that they're getting prepared to start, well, they are starting to build the walls. Next slide. Okay, they're digging the latrine and putting up the walls. And the final slide. Whoa, I got a slide missing. Okay, I don't know what happened. Well, my apologies. The last slide shows the walls. I'll mail it to you over the weekend. I'll mail it to you. And it shows the walls building up. They have the roof on and everything else. We're 2 weeks away from completion. Now, we have 5 members in our, you go to the last slide, thank you. We have 5 members in our committee, and we should have around 10. So we need 5 more. We're having a meeting this coming Tuesday, August the 31st at 5 o'clock at Rotary Park. That's across the street from Maine, from the Pleasanton Hotel, north of the creek is Rotary Park. For those of you that are interested in, we have 2 projects at least coming up this year that we're going to have besides this one that we're ending right now. So if you can, please come. Let me know if you want to join and come Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. This project is truly enriching and making better the lives of about 550 people. And this club, paid for 80% of that. So thank you for your generosity. You're affecting lives better. Next, I'm going to take a second to introduce our speaker today, who is Alameda County District Attorney Nancy O'Malley. She has served as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer in Alameda County since being appointed by the Board of Supervisors in September 2009. Subsequently, she was elected to the position in November 2010, 2014, and 2018. DA O'Malley is a nationally recognized expert in issues involving violence against women, violence against persons with disabilities, and interpersonal violence, and including sexual assault, domestic violence, elder abuse, child abuse, stalking, human trafficking, and exploitation. She serves in an office with a national reputation for excellence, dating back to former district attorney and United States Supreme Court Chief Justice Earl Warren. DA O'Malley carries out his proud legacy as the first woman to serve as Alameda County's elected district attorney. Nancy O'Malley.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here and see faces that I recognize and some of my friends who are here also. And thank you for inviting me back. I'm going to talk a little bit today, and I want to make sure that I leave enough time for questions because for many of us, the last year and a half with COVID has been very challenging and no less challenging than what's happening about keeping our community safe and being able to support victims of crime, particularly. It's a very important initiative of my office, as well as holding those accountable who are committing crimes. And we do that in a number of ways, which I'll talk about very briefly. But I want to first start by giving you just the structure of my office. The office was founded in 1851, been around for a long time, and for a number of years, the DA was the part-time DA until Orr Warren became the DA in 1925. So he did a number of things. One, he wrote the county charter, which has the district attorney staff not in the civil service system. That's become a big issue lately because when you're, for those that know those systems, when you're in the civil service system, you can almost never terminate a person, even if it's for just cause. But in my office, every lawyer, every person who works in the office, the police, the administrative staff, the victim advocates, we are absolutely bound by the highest ethics and by truth. So our mission is not just to convict people who are guilty. It is to get to the truth and make sure that justice is served. And if that means that a case doesn't get charged or a case is dismissed because the evidence does not support somebody who's accused, that is our obligation. And that's an important obligation, especially it's become even more apparent to all of us in my office while COVID is happening, because there are a lot of pressures from a lot of different areas. The business community is upset about people not being held in jail for committing crimes in their businesses. The advocates are upset that anyone's in jail, and there's a whole bunch in between. So for me, I can go to work every day and know that whatever decisions that are being made in my office, they are the right decisions based on law and based on facts. My office has about 400, a little over 400 people. We have about 100, but we're slated for about 160 attorneys. During COVID, about 15 of the people of sort of my generation realized that there's life beyond office, and they were all working from home, and they decided to stay. So they retired. So we're now recruiting lawyers with experience and bringing in young lawyers to the office so we can keep up with the work that happens here in Alameda County. We have 70 sworn peace officers, and they do investigations after the police are done and they give the case to us, and our investigators pick it up. Or in many respects, we do original investigations in the civil area with environmental issues and consumer fraud issues, in real estate fraud, in those areas where it's primarily civil. And they do all the original investigations. When Lowell Jensen was the DA back in like 1970, he determined that victims of crime in the system were being treated like pieces of evidence. There was no respect given. Nobody, if you're a victim, nobody knew what was going on. I was in college a little bit later than that, and I experienced it as a victim advocate working for or volunteering at a rape crisis center and domestic violence shelter. And I actually brought actions against the DA's office in Contra Costa County for the way in which the victims were being treated. Now, the irony of that is my dad was the district attorney. And when I tried to tell him at home at the dinner table, he said, "Don't talk to me at the dinner table. If you have a complaint, file a complaint," which I did, and they changed. But Lowell Jensen created the first victim witness program, meaning having advocates in an office that are solely charged with supporting victims of crime, letting people know what's going on, helping them understand the system, being there with them. And we provide a lot of benefits. We pay for all the funerals of people who are murdered. We pay for mental health. We pay for health care. We pay for a lot of things for people that don't otherwise have needs. And the one victim advocate, when I joined the office back in 1984, is now a team of 45. And because our work has increased so tremendously. And then we have a lot of administrative people, including forensic people. Bob and I were talking about forensic work he's doing. We have forensic accountants, we have forensic investigators, we have a lot of forensic people to make sure that we get to the bottom of what it is that we're investigating. Well, we normally process about 10,000 or 15,000 cases a year. About 5,000 or 7,000 of those cases are felony level cases, meaning cases that could expose somebody to state prison. The more serious cases, the most serious of which is a murder, but everywhere in between. And then we have about 12 to 15,000 misdemeanor cases, and those are misdemeanor cases that are more commonly committed, and they're cases that more often impact the quality of life or impact like businesses. And you've seen, I'm sure, videos of people going into a store and just having a bag and clearing everything off the shelves and then walking out the door. And that's a misdemeanor, as long as it's not more than $1,000 worth of product. And the stores don't even take a risk of engaging with somebody who's doing that kind of theft. People just literally walk out the door, and there's not a lot that we can do about it. And a lot of that has come to us through our legislature. And before this is over, I'm going to talk just a little bit about the role that we all play as people in the community that care about safety and care about law and justice and care about giving people second chances also. I don't want to forget that ever. But there's a lot going on that are really affecting how our public safety is upheld in all of our communities. So since when COVID hit, we still had crime. In fact, very sadly, crime increased pretty dramatically. And you might read in the paper that in Oakland, the homicides have increased about 35%. They now have exceeded 85 homicides, where last year they were at 60. They're about half of them are being solved because Oakland police have losing officers from their department. Out here right now, we have a relatively new branch. We call it the East County Hall of Justice, and it is our busiest branch now. It covers the cases that come from Pleasanton, Dublin, from the Tri-Valley, as well as felony cases from the southern part of the county. It's a very, very busy quarter. And out here, we've had several serious crimes. And shockingly, Pleasanton was the last year and a half since COVID has had more shootings than at any other time. We have murder cases coming out of Pleasanton, which people had just never heard of. And so the crime is not, no communities become immune to the crime. And part of what we believe is going on as we look closely is that because the courts have been largely closed, that we haven't been able to process cases the way we should be able to. And there's no incentive for an individual to plead guilty to a crime, even though they know they're guilty and we have the evidence, if they never go before a judge who's going to say, here's the offer you have. If you say no, we're going to send you to a jury trial. And generally, even the public defender will agree, people need kind of that threat of going to trial to finally say, yes, I'll plead guilty. So the crime rates have gone up everywhere. The courts have been relatively closed. Most of our courts are still operating through video, not actually physically in a courtroom. We were challenged with COVID like everybody, but for sure, because all of these serious offenders are pretty much in Santa Rita. And when they come to court, they have to be put on a bus with a bunch of other people coming to court. And then they go into a holding cell with a bunch of other people who have been in jail. And then they come out to the courtroom and get close to people like my staff and the defense bar. So we had to figure something else out for that also, because it's a very dangerous situation. Now, I have to say, the sheriff has done a remarkable job of keeping the COVID levels down at Santa Rita. There have been some, of course. I mean, he has almost 2,000 people there, including his, and then in addition to his staff. But right now, on an average week, they have either 0, 1, or 2 people who test positive. So he's done a pretty great job, and he doesn't get very much credit for that in such a huge communal setting. But so we just haven't had the opportunity to process these cases. So right now, we're sitting on about 12,000 cases backlog, which some of them we'll see, and we're working through them. The public defender has not made it easy. And, you know, he's doing his job and his staff are, but they're, when we talk to the lawyers, the lawyers aren't talking to the clients, then there's sort of no reason to talk to the lawyer because the lawyer's not the one making the decision what punishment someone's going to get or whether they will plead guilty or not, what their defense is. That's really up to the defendant or the person who's accused. So it's become even challenging because we just don't have people coming into the courtroom. We're asking, you know, 8,000 people charged with misdemeanor crimes to get on a computer and participate, and it just isn't happening. So, so it's been challenging, criminal justice in the time of COVID. But at the end of the day, the work that we do is to everything that we can, bring all of our resources to make sure to the extent we can, our communities are safe. And that those people that are really impeding and affecting the safety of all of us in all of our communities, those people are removed from the community and we're processing them in a different way. I say all that, and as a person who is absolutely committed to giving others second chances, people who get caught up in the criminal justice system. We have a lot of young offenders, you know, none of these young people were in school. And, you know, particularly in North County where it's been even more challenging, where kids are just not even participating in school with nothing to do with bad influence and an overslot of guns in our community and firearms. So the first thing I'd say is that for those young people that we find coming into our justice system, many of them they haven't finished high school, they don't have a job, they don't have any skills. And so we have put together 8 courts, different courts, where we can send them to first figure out what their issues are, get them into a school-based program, get them a GED, get them into a job training program. Like, you know, we talk about, we work really closely with the carpenters, with the electricians, with the laborers. These are all jobs that somebody can get that'll be living wage and benefits and sustained employment. And we found that with those people that go into our courts, and these are all courts that we've created, that we have about 5% recidivism, which means they're moving on and they're not coming back to us other than maybe for jury duty. The other thing we have done is we really recognize the impact of mental health on people. And this last year and a half, mental health has affected all of us on some level. And a lot of the people that come into the justice system have mental health issues. As a result of that, we've created a place called the CARES Navigation Center. It's actually located in Oakland, but it's available for all law enforcement. And if they come up to somebody who's having a mental health issue and they're committing crimes, like somebody who's in the store stealing everything off the shelves, or on the street breaking into cars, or whatever it is, that if they have that, they're identified as a mental health or a substance use disorder right then and there, then the officers can bring them to our care center. Our care center, we partner with an organization called La Familia, who provides mental health treatment and a lot of other things, but primarily mental health. And then I have people on my staff who we call peer support specialists. And these are people who have been to prison, a couple of them for murder. And they have turned their lives around. They understand bad and they understand good and they understand opportunity and they know how to talk to people. You can't BS a BSer is what they tell me. And so they work for me, but they work at the CARES Navigation Center. So when somebody comes in and tries to run a number, they're right there to deal with it. But more importantly, they're there to provide support, ongoing support. So people can get medicated, we get them into programs, and we haven't seen those people come back. It's relatively new. Sadly, probably Oakland has brought the least number of people there, and they have the greatest need for mental health intervention of individuals they're working with. But we're working with them. And a lot of our other courts, we've kept going with our peer support people. Everybody's masked, everyone has their distance. But we're not giving up on trying to get people out of the criminal justice system. We're not giving up on trying to get people back on a healthy, straight road. And like I said, working with our trades has been remarkable. Working with our education institutions have been remarkable, and things like that. So the challenge, couple of challenges we have is that our juvenile system is changing. We have some serious offenders in juvenile, I'm sorry to say. We've got several youth that are in our juvenile hall who are awaiting a trial for a murder or have come from Pleasanton, of juveniles who committed crimes out here. We have in the Department of Juvenile Justice, which was a sort of they used to call it the baby prison or the teenager prison, but it really changed a lot. It was away from the jurisdiction, and it used to be a terrible place for youth to go. It was warehousing youth and just really teaching them how to become adult prisoners. But it's changed. It became a very therapeutic, very engaging place. Really great success on turning the lives of youth around and having them become productive. That's closing. And so all youth will stay local now. So the challenge we have right now is having enough programs and enough facilities to hold some of these serious offenders in a facility for, I mean, a youth who's 12 years old could be in the juvenile justice system and be there until they're 25. And so it's a challenge that we're working through now. And you know, we've got a big group of working, but most importantly, at the end of every discussion, we come back to the point to say, whatever decision we make, it has to be where our community is not jeopardized by, and that their safety is not jeopardized by us not paying attention to how we're taking care of juveniles or engaging juvenile offenders. And the other challenge we have is that many of you have probably read how there was an emergency bail schedule issued by our Chief Justice when COVID hit to keep people out of jail. And many of the counties, including ours, have adopted that and continued it. So the revolving door of people who are getting arrested, brought to jail, booked, and then released immediately is overwhelming. And for some police, they say, why should I even go out to Santa Rita? They'll be out before I get out of the parking lot. Some of those people have committed worse crimes. The most recent one was the person was released for breaking into a series of cars. He almost immediately went out in the parking lot and attacked an employee at Santa Rita who was sitting in her car and carjacked her. So we've seen a lot of those increased crimes. And you know, when there's enough to say when they're back in custody, but in the meantime, they committed crimes and hurt people. And so the bail issue has been really challenging for the sheriff, for sure, to keep Santa Rita healthy, for us to keep people in so we can process it, and then particularly for the community. The recidivism of people who have been released, arrested, booked, and released is about 70% right now. So 70% of the people continue to engage. And it makes sense on some level because there's no accountability built into a system that's driven by COVID and the pandemic. And so we're trying to come up with a lot of different things that we can do with individuals being released so that they don't come right back out and continue to commit those crimes. But at the end, I will just say that you know, right now we have over 100 sexual assault cases pending. We have about 1,000 domestic violence cases pending. We have about 600 child abuse cases pending. Those are all crimes that happen in the confines of people's homes. And if COVID has done one major thing, it has kept people in shelter in place with an abuser or an offender. And so we've done quite a bit of commercials and public awareness campaigns to let people know there is help and to let people know that there's someone they can call to get help. So it sounds very doom and gloom, and it is, but I have to say, there are a lot of challenges. Right now, our legislature is going through the legislation that will go to the governor's office in a couple of weeks. Some of it I feel is very damaging to public health or to public safety. And so, you know, we're starting to list bills that are on our website for the community to know, because I can go into Sacramento and lodge my complaint, although I have 4 bills pending right now that are going through, so I don't want anyone to complain about them. I want them to support it. But there are some bills like making this bail, that we would just eliminate bail as a mechanism for holding people in custody. And some people need to be away from society. And bail is one way to do it, or incarcerating them. There's some other bills that are pending that would remove the ability of my office to charge, let's just say, a robbery. That's a crime. But if that robbery is committed with someone, and the person has a gun, that's an enhancement to the robbery. And there's some legislation to take away all those, the ability to identify those special conditions that could increase his punishment. There's a lot of things going on in the legislature that is really disregarding victims. And at the end of the day, victims of crime are the ones who are really paying for what happened. The system, aside from us, the work that we're doing, the system is being designed to not support victims, to reduce the amount of resources that we have for victims of crime, to limit the type of services we can provide victims of crime with state or federal money. And so, for anyone who wants to lodge your complaint with your elected official, the hope for me, I'm most vocal on the issues around pulling back on the support and the care that we provide to victims of crime and to our community to stay safe. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. We have a few minutes for questions if you have any.
In the past, I'm very insistent they are out there, but have the shelters for the domestic violence, have they, you have less of the,
Right. Right. So the shelters, what happened with the shelters is if one person tested positive, they had to clear out the shelters. And so they didn't send people out to the street, however. A lot of our shelter providers were able to get vouchers for hotels, and some of them actually took over hotels. We have a family justice center here in Alameda County, which is part of my office, and it co-locates a lot of service providers, and we've already housed about 400 women with children since COVID, by federal money that's come into the county, by fundraising, and a lot of other ways. So we do have avenues to be able to help people. But housing is clearly an issue. But we have paid close attention to that. Yes.
First of all, thank you very much for taking part of your day to speak to our club. But with respect to some of the legislation that you were talking about, what's the driver behind that legislation? Is it like an inequality argument? Is it an overcrowding argument? I mean, why would anybody want to have legislation like this? Requirements that we're going to place.
Well, there's a lot going on about criminal justice reform, and there's a lot of money that's coming from like a George Soros type person and a lot of other people that have a lot of money that have been funding some of these initiatives. And I'm not challenging all of them. I think there's a lot of good work that's coming out, but a driver of that is that people should not be incarcerated, and that people shouldn't be incarcerated forever. And some people need to be incarcerated forever because they're still not safe, and they're not, they still are going to cause issues. We look at that very closely because people do come up eligible to be released from prison. So we look at all those cases and we are able to make our objection or not object. But I always reflect on a guy who many years ago, some of you might remember this, there was a guy named Stainer Kid who was kidnapped by a man. And then 7 years later, the same man kidnapped another kid named Tim. And when the kid Stainer, who is now like 13, figured out that now he's just kidnapped another boy, Tim, that they escaped and went to the authorities. We prosecuted him, and he got a life sentence, but then was released. And I think he was 82 or 83 when he was released, in a wheelchair, very infirmed. And the first thing he did when he got out was he had a caregiver who was provided by the state. And he asked the caregiver, he said, I will give you $500 if you can find a little black boy for me to bring to own or to have. So thankfully, she was a good woman. She went straight to the police, and we actually fabricated a birth certificate so that she could present it. get the money from him to show that he was serious about the crime, and then he went back to prison. So there are people that need to be, you know, we want people to have second chances. We want them to get rehabilitated. We want them to come out. Some of them work for me and they're awesome employees, but some people need to stay in.
What is the protocol when you release people from jail? And how do they, I know there's a lot of crime that takes place from the jails with marks races, and folks in on marks races, the mornings that are inebriated, et cetera. So what is the courts do when somebody releases them? How do they get them out of the community and back to?
So the courts order a release and the sheriff has no authority to even hold them until the bus comes up. So there is an AC transit line now that goes out to Santa Rita so that people can get on a bus. The sheriff also built a shelter out there where people with the covered area where they could stay and be covered until the bus comes. Sometimes people come and pick them up. Sometimes they come here to Pleasanton and Dublin and steal a car. So there's a lot of ways, but once the judge makes the order, the sheriff doesn't have any authority to keep them longer, like, you know, tomorrow the bus will be here or something. And so it's a challenge for what people can do. And a lot of people just walk too far, although, like I said, the sheriff negotiated to have AC Transit put a stop there and have it be a regular stop to get them at least to BART.
That's a great summary of what your office does, and it sounds wonderful. My question is, do you have what do you think the major factors are? Why the crime rate for the murder rate has been increasing?
So what I believe is, and I've done a lot of study around this and guns are two areas where we've done really in-depth study. What I believe is that when COVID hit, the streets were empty. And really when the streets are empty, even the police were having to be careful because of the jobs that they were doing, that it sort of turned the streets on some level over to the gangs. And we believe that a lot of the homicides that are happening are as much opportunistic as they are gang driven. And by gang, I mean, you know, 3 or 4 people together. You know, there's nobody's there to witness it. Nobody's there to stop it. It's the same thing with breaking into cars, that is shot up over the top because nobody's out there to enforce. And the police are doing the best they can. But especially in Oakland, I mean, Oakland brings the most work business to us. But out here in the valley, we've seen big increases also and kind of spillover from the north part of the county down here. And maybe, you know, we know people have moved down here. It's a place where they aren't so obviously seen by other gangs. And a lot of the crime, a lot of the homicides are really gang group type things. Bill?
Hi, Nancy, nice to see you. Thank you. I have a question about the corporate responsibility. Our Safeway here at the Valley in Cornell, almost every time I'm in there, I'm in the liquor section. And my favorite guy there, Bob, and all Bob, like best wine sommelier there is in the Valley. But people walk in with the backpack, put the booze in the backpack, and walk out the door. He has some kind of grab sandwich. And he's been told by Safeway that if he takes their license comes down or anything else, that he's gonna be fired. He can't do it again. He can't do anything because I just take this. It's almost every time I'm there, which I imagine really goes on all the day long. Which then becomes a draw when the people speak and talk about how easy it is to work at Safeway. I've had the same problem at Bill. And then, but there's no responsibility. And I understand Safeway's liability issue. There's a cost kind of attitude that if I got to pay 3 security guards, you know, it's going to cost me $300,000 a year, and there's liability if somebody gets hurt. But they just allow it to happen. But it also attracts more people and without any penalty. The police can't do anything out of this.
Well, some of it are people are, some of them are people, yeah, some people run and steal food because they're hungry.
Yeah.
But there are rings of people that are going in and doing this. I mean, somebody's stealing a bunch of diapers who would not be a logical person to have a baby at home. is a different scenario. So actually, the law changed. It was passed by the voters. It was written by kind of the left-leaning advocates that said if it's under $950, it can only be a misdemeanor, because they didn't want to incarcerate people for stealing food or whatever. It's a problem. And the problem with some of the businesses is that they stop at the door. So Jerry Brown, who was governor when that law passed, was at Safeway, and a guy filled a golf cart and walked out, and the security guard stopped at the door, and the guy went out, and Jerry Brown, as governor, was with his security, and he said, the security guard, go get him. It's like, no, against the rules, I can't go out. Because it's a liability issue if the security guard gets hurt, if somebody has a weapon or whatever. And so Jerry turned to his security and said, will you go get him? And the guy said, yeah, I'm your security, I'm not going there. So nothing happened. Other than what came out of that experience, and this is where our voices become so critically important to our elected officials so that they hear what we're experiencing. And we've got good elected officials who represent us out here. But what they need to hear is, like Jerry did, is that the next legislative cycle, he passed a law, he signed into law that if it's an organized situation, then we can prosecute him for felony crimes. So you could take the organized crime, he had to rewrite the law to get around this law that he had signed into place. And so it's very challenging. And I'll tell you that for as many advocates are, in this year telling me, let everybody out of jail and we're terrible for even prosecuting, I've got the business community saying, how are we going to keep operating with this kind of craziness that goes on with lawlessness? And if I could say one thing about COVID is that it has created a complete lack of accountability for many people in our community that are criminals. Yes.
Can you give us the name of the left-leaning official that? I'm not kidding. I'm serious. Apparently, we're uncomfortable giving the name on your response. Can you give us that person's name?
Well, I would say Senator Skinner has been doing creating a lot of legislation, some of which I think is okay. Some of it I feel like it's gone too far. And I'm a pretty moderate person who's created a lot of initiatives to help people get out of criminal justice. There's this bill that will eliminate bail in California, is a senator named Hertzberg, who's down from LA. And up here, we have, I think that Assemblymember Bauer Cahan, she's very solid. She's, got a good head on her shoulders. She reads the pros and cons. She votes the way that at least I support what she does. And so there are some that are very good, and there's some that kind of get pressured into voting in a certain way because of the politics of Sacramento.
Age before beauty.
I just want to thank you, Nancy, for your years of service. I know recently you announced you're not going to run for office again, and I can understand why after what you just told us. But I wonder, have you changed your mind?
I do think that periodically because there's so much going on. But the truth is, part of the work that I've been able to do as the DA has been outside of my own, but the budget the county gives me. And so we have 3 foundations, one that supports our Family Justice Center. We do a lot of work in human trafficking. And I'll just tell you this one statistic that drives me when I say, oh, I'm not doing this anymore. We track online sales of people for sex. And we looked at one 24-hour period in October of last year during COVID. There were 1,135 ads selling a woman for sex. 1,135 in Oakland. And of that, it represented 995 individual women or girls. And our analytics could tell us that at least 70% of those 995 who were being sold online for sex were under 18. So my work's not over. It's just I'm not going to have to deal with personnel anymore.
Being written to legalize drugs like heroin.
They're not heroin, not heroin. LSD, mushrooms. I mean, I'm proud to say I've never used any of these drugs, so I don't even really pay attention to it. But yes, there is a bill. We opposed it. They had at one point ketamine in there, which I pointed out to the senator that ketamine is a drug for horses. It's a horse tranquilizer. And the way it's used in our world is date rape drugs. That's how you can knock someone out and do whatever you want to do. So they removed ketamine, but they made it a 2-year bill. So it's still there. It's not done yet. But it got traction because it's a very liberal legislature right now.
Who's the author of that bill?
That is Scott Wiener from San Francisco.
Let's all give our Rotary Club a president. We're gonna wrap it up in the next minute or so. Julio's gonna talk.
Yeah, just quickly, for your badges, the back of your badge sticker has fallen off over the years. I have some new ones with a picture of the box you can register.
Dennis, would you like to do the opportunity drawing here?
Yes, I would. We have $71 in our opportunity drawing. And the first number is 884. Of course. Just one chip. Just one chip. All right, the next number is 872. Nice. And the red, one chip. And the red one is in there. I did see it. Nope. All right. Better luck next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting is adjourned.
All right, let's go.